So for the last 7 years, I've helped now over 1,000 realtors earn more than $100,000 a year in annualized income. And after doing that, I finally realized that there was a pattern that's kept happening over and over and over again. And here's the thing, it didn't matter how long these agents were in the business, it didn't matter their past success, their experience, what brokerage they were in, what market they were in, what the housing market was doing, what interest rates were doing, who the president was. There was a pattern that just kept happening over and over and over again. And I'm going to walk you through what I learned over the last 7 years analyzing these agents' businesses, that if you just do it, you just copy it, you just implement it, you just steal it, it will virtually be impossible for you not to earn a minimum of 100K over the next 12 months. Now, when I interview agents like you that are watching the content here on YouTube, over 80% of you told me you're not yet earning six figures. And so I'm going to walk you through exactly how to do this by just copying what I've done over the past 7 years with thousands of other agents. And so before we jump into this thing, I'm going to show you the first step to this system. I'm going to walk you through it in this video. And then the additional steps that you need to implement the system, you can get in the Listing Agent Blueprint. This is a free course. There's a link to this right in the description beneath this video. It's going to show you how to build your lead generation plan, what lead sources to go after, how to prioritize each lead, what to say to each lead. It's going to give you everything that you need step by step so that you can start implementing the system I'm going to teach you in this video. There's a link to that in the description. So let me explain the first pattern that I recognized over the past 7 years is that every agent that I coached that built a consistent six-figure income, I'm talking about agents that weren't like making $20,000 one month and then they wouldn't get a commission check for 3 or 4 months. I'm talking about agents that consistently are getting 5-figure commission checks every single month that compound month over month over month, that all of those agents had a listing focused business. Yes, they worked with some buyers. There's no doubt about it. But primarily, the first pattern of all those 1,000 agents and agents that I'm working with right now, it's primarily because they were focused on a listing-based business and not a buyer business. Now, that's not to take away that you can't build your business working with buyers. It's just the consistency may be a little bit more challenging. Now, the second pattern is that every time when we looked at all the closings they had and we said, okay, well, how many listings did this person need to have to generate one closing? In other words, for every 10 listings that they got, how many closings were they getting? And here's the pattern. Again, it didn't matter who they were, what market, et cetera, et cetera. Over 7 years, over 1,000 agents and counting, it took them 1.4 listings to generate one commission check. In other words, 70% of the listings they took turned into a closed commission. So out of every 10 listings they took, 7 of them became commission checks. This is just what I've learned as an average. Now, the next pattern, and this is all going to make a lot of sense to you in just a second. The next pattern was that in order to secure one of those listings that we just talked about, on average, it took them meeting with 2 qualified sellers to secure one contract or one listing contract. They had a 50% conversion. Now, again, some agents converted higher, some lower, but on average, what I saw for the 1,000 plus agents I've helped to crack the six-figure income is that on average, it took them going and presenting to 2 qualified sellers in order to secure one. What do I mean by qualified sellers? I'm talking about sellers who, A, had clear motivation to sell their home. It wasn't like they were filled with hopium, like, oh, I'll just put it on the market if I get some ridiculous price. No, they had a specific reason why they were moving. Number two, they did not have an agent. In other words, they agreed to interview these agents in person. They've invited them to their home to have a conversation around listing their property. And then number three, they had clear timelines when they wanted to get their house on the market. It wasn't some pie in the sky, like, yeah, one day I'll think about selling the house. So it took two of those to get one. Now, some of you might say, well, I convert a lot higher than that. Some of you are like, well, I don't know, the NAR statistic says 25%, 1 out of 4. On average, for six-figure agents, what I've learned is it takes them 2 to get 1. Now, the next pattern, when I looked and said, okay, well, what was it taking for these agents to secure a listing appointment where they actually went to go meet the person at their home and that meeting actually happened? We call that an appointment met. It took them setting an appointment with 2 prospects in order to go on one. Why? Well, to have that 50% listing appointment set to listing appointment met ratio, it happens because sometimes people ghost you. Sometimes prospects cancel. Sometimes people don't show up. And sometimes the agents that I work with cancel on the seller. Why? Because maybe the seller lacked motivation. Maybe the seller was unrealistic on price. That could be for a variety of different reasons. But the average was that it took these agents who were consistently earning 5 figures or more per month, 6 figures or more per year, 2 prospects to say, yes, I will meet with you on this day and this time to actually go on one of those appointments. Now, the next pattern number 5. What do we analyzed the numbers and we said, okay, through our tracker, in order to secure one of these listing appointments, in order to set one of these appointments, it took these agents having 5 seller leads in their pipeline that they would follow up with that allowed them to convert 20% of those leads into an appointment set. So, in other words, if an agent had 100 leads in their pipeline, that means that month they'd have the potential to set 20 listing appointments and go on 10 of those. That's what we saw on average. Now, when we talk about leads, again, the course is going to walk you through exactly what I mean by leads and how to get leads for free. We're not talking about buying leads, how to get listing leads for free, how to find these people, what to say to these people, how to generate the lead, how to generate the opportunity. The course will show you exactly how to do that. Again, there's a link in the description. But on average, agents needed 5 in order to set one listing appointment. Now, the next question that you probably have, and here's the answer, is, okay, what did they have to do in order to get one of these leads? Well, they had to have 10 conversations with their ideal client avatar. 10 conversations. They had 10 conversations with their ideal prospects, their ideal clients. These are homeowners who had the potential or the likelihood to list and sell their home in the neighborhoods that they wanted, at the price point that they wanted, et cetera, et cetera. It took them 10 of those conversations in order to generate one qualified lead. So there was a 10% conversion. Well, the next pattern, I said, okay, well, what does it take to have these 10 conversations? And what we found over the past 7 years of tracking this is that it takes these agents on average about an hour and a half of outbound direct prospecting to have those conversations. In other words, they're having 7 quality conversations per hour. When I mean quality conversation, by definition means that you have a voice-to-voice or face-to-face conversation with the homeowner about the potential of selling their home. That's what I mean by conversations. Now, in an hour and a half of focused, disciplined, outbound prospecting, these agents were able to generate 10 of those conversations. Now, here's the craziest part. Here's how we kind of like put this whole thing together. The last pattern is when we look at the agents who were making over $100,000. In this example, if the agent's commission check on average when they closed a home was $8,000, they'd have to sell 12 houses, right? Makes sense. $100,000 divided by 8,000, they'd have to sell 12 homes. That now, through these averages, it was a predictable system that if the agent just followed this system step by step, they would guarantee the result that they were after, which is to generate six figures in income. In other words, they had to generate 17 listings. That if they were able to take 17 listings in 12 months, 70% of those would actually get to the closing table on average. Sometimes it was a little bit more, sometimes it was a little bit less. In order to get those 17 listings, they would have to met with 34 quality prospects in their home to present their value proposition to have the opportunity to win the listing. Because 17, they converted half of those into actual listings, 70% of those into actual closings. In order to get those appointments, to go see those people, to meet with 34 people face to face, they had to set 68 appointments. They had to get 68 prospects to say, yes, I will meet you on this day and this time, of which 50% converted into 34. In order to set those appointments on average, they needed 340 leads, which again, 20% converted into an appointment set. And they had to have 3,400 conversations. Now you're like, 3,400 conversations in a year. We're talking about in a year. So if you're a full-time agent and you're working, we'll call it 22 working days out of the year, or roughly 250 days, this is 13 people a day. This is 13 people. And here's what's crazy. If you look at the number of people that you talk to annually, it typically represents the number of homes you sell, or the number, if you look at the number of people you talk to daily, rather, it typically represents the number of homes you will sell annually. Just look at the math. 3,400 divided by, call it 250, 260 days, right? That's a full-time, so 260 divided by 12 months. This is somebody working 21 days per month. This is a full-time realtor. So 3,400 conversations divided by 260 working days. It's 13 conversations per day. Look at how many closings this agent would need. 12. They almost always line up perfectly. It would take them 485 hours of outbound prospecting. Well, before you faint, let me just do some math. 485 divided by 260 days. Again, it's under 2 hours of work. It's under 2 hours of work. And if we look at and say, okay, $100,000 divided by 485 hours of actual work, it's over $200 per hour. And again, inside of the Blueprint course, it will show you how to do all of this step by step. But the point of this video is to show you, okay, if you follow a system that is predictable, it's duplicatable, and you just do it, there's no reason why you can't produce the same result. So to see this thing really come to life, to see a real agent who's really done this, there's a video right here where this agent walks you through how he went from being a brand new agent to generating a six-figure income in just 12 months.